Alright, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be hitting chest. Again, something similar to yesterday. We're just going to play it by ear, see how much the fatigue sets in as the workout goes on, and kind of baseline from there. So we'll start off, as we do every chest day, we'll start off with some flat dumbbell presses, move on to incline presses, and finish off with flies. Let's get to it. Alright, let's say you're just getting started and you're thinking about getting into lifting for the first time, and you don't know where to start. So how would you go about designing a good beginner sort of training plan for yourself? Well, in my opinion, where everyone should start is basically with the heavy basics. Start off, don't try and do anything too fancy. Especially if you're going into a commercial gym, it's very easy to get nearly overwhelmed with all the different machines and fucking contraptions and whatnot that they have. Start off with the heavy basics, your squats, your deadlifts, your bench press or dumbbell press, overhead presses, pull downs or pull ups if you can do pull ups, and rowing movements. Okay, that's probably the best place to start. Get those movement patterns down. That's really, really important that you try and get those movement patterns down and learn how to do those movements right, because ultimately the skills that you learn in doing those movement patterns, they will transfer over whenever you go on the machines or on to doing whatever. Those skills will transfer over. Hell, even if you're doing it, especially if you're doing you're getting into lifting to do a sport, the movement patterns that you learn when you're doing, say, a squat or a pressing movement will more than likely have some sort of carryover to the sport that you're training for. So yeah, that's kind of where I would start. Start with the heavy basics, and even whenever you become more advanced, it's never a bad thing to have your workouts to have the heavy workouts, the heavy basics as the foundation for your workouts. So even whenever you do then later on go to start incorporating and doing machine work, it's not a bad idea to have your heavy basic movement and then some machine work sort of sprinkled in, nearly like a seasoning on the workout. But yeah, I think it's very important as a beginner to start off doing that. Now, what exercise choices that you take from there? Again, your squats, deadlifts, presses, pull-ups or pull-downs, and rowing movements. That'll hit all of your major muscle groups, and then spread those out. What you want to do is, if you're doing squats and deadlifts, don't do them in the same day. In fact, not only do you not do them in the same day, don't even do them in consecutive days. Space them out as far apart in the week as you can get them, because both of those exercises use a lot of the same muscle groups, and both of those those exercises have very, very high fatigue rates. So you need to try and give yourself as much distance in time between those exercises as you can. Aside from that, your your chest and your back work. Again, split those out onto 2 separate days, but because those are antagonistic muscle groups, you can kind of get away with training those 2 body parts consecutively on consecutive days. That's essentially why my workout looks as it does. On leg day, I do leg day on a Monday usually. So we'll have legs, then we'll do chest, then back, and then on the Thursday we'll do deadlifts. And that way it gives me, but you've got Tuesday, Wednesday, and of sort of resting as such between doing a squat on a Monday and a deadlift on a Thursday. You've got those 2 full days in between, and then again you've got the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so you've got 3 days on the other side of that before you're doing squats again. So that's the way I would, if I was advising you on just starting out for the first time, that's kind of like the thing to keep in your head. It's those heavy basics. Get those down first before you worry about going on to all the fancy machine work. And so if you think about it, there's machines out there like pullover machines and like, I don't know, fucking hip thrust machines and all these things. Not to say, I'm not trying to diminish those machines. Those machines all have their place and they're all good for what they do. But when you're just starting out, don't overcomplicate it. Free weights, barbells, dumbbells, and those heavy basic movements. That's where to start. Anyway, let's hit another set here. Alright, so why would you choose squat, deadlift and pressing movements, pull downs and rows? Alright, the reason's really quite simple. Those movements, when you perfect them, they're going to make you stronger. And whenever you're stronger, it gives you a good base, a good foundation to build on. So that whenever you do go on to doing all the other machines, using all the other machines and stuff, you're starting from a stronger place. Because what you got to remember is a lot of the times in machines, the machines isolate usually particular planes of motion, so they do. So whenever you can end up, if you start by going onto a machine, two things can happen. You can either not be strong enough to be able to move on that plane of motion. And a good example of this would be like a preacher curl machine. Preacher curls, because they isolate the bicep so much, preacher curl machines can be, even with a light weight, can be really difficult. So by building up the strength, by doing, say, a standing barbell curl, or even better, doing some sort of pull down or rowing movement, and building your biceps up that way, that'll give your bicep that bit of strength that whenever you go on to the preacher curl, to use the preacher curl, you're able to handle the weight better. So you are. But the second, and probably the more important thing, is that because machines limit your range of motion to specific planes, the opposite can happen. If you start in a machine, you can become strong in that one plane, but all the other ancillary muscles that would normally be getting strengthened by doing it with a free weight, doing the same sort of movement with a free weight, again like a barbell curl or whatever, as opposed to a preacher curl, those other supporting muscles will atrophy. So it then becomes, you start to get muscular imbalances. So in my opinion, it's always good. That's why I in my opinion, it's good to use, even whenever you're more advanced, to keep a lot of the basic movements in your workout, to do those as well, because it's those ancillary muscles, they'll not get left out, they'll not lag behind because you're only using machines. Now, suppose it's different if you're going to be, I'm not a competitive bodybuilder, so if you're a competitive bodybuilder, it might be different. You may be better off focusing. Again, I think you should probably start off doing the heavy basics, but it may be more beneficial to you if you're in competition to work on all those little details and stuff. But for the average person just starting out, I would recommend every time heavy basics, work on the heavy basics, get those down first. Make sure you're, all the ancillary muscles and groups of muscles, not just the ones directly, but all the little muscle groups that are bracing. For example, when you're doing a squat, there's lots of muscles, lots of your musculature when you're doing a squat are actually working isometrically. So they're not contracting they're not lengthening and shortening. The muscle groups aren't lengthening and shortening. They're just bracing. They're just holding tension. So they are. And they're not going to become. That's not going to make those muscles big. You're not going to get a lot of hypertrophy from isometric. In fact, you get very little hypertrophy from isometric training. What it will do is it will make those muscles strong in that one position. And whenever you're talking about a functional movement like a squat or a deadlift, that is the function of those little stabilizing muscles, is to be strong in that one tiny position. Anyway, let's hit another set. Okay, so that wasn't a great set at all. I've lost 2 reps from that top set since last week, and they felt really, really fucking hard. So that, as I'm no doubt you've just seen, we'll maybe do a back off set here. Maybe do a back off set here with the last weight down and see how many we can get there. That's very disappointing, to be honest. But again, it's disappointing in terms of I haven't missed a chest workout since last week. So, pardon me. I was hoping that I was going to be able to match last week's weight and reps. But it is what it is. Again, I dare say it's to do with fighting the infection off, and the body using muscle glycogen stores as a source of energy to do that. It's just, it is what it is. Anyway, have a bit of a rest here, and then we'll do a back off set and see how many reps we can get. What about the push-pull leg split? Well, let me tell you why I don't recommend the push-pull leg split for beginners. Reason being, as a beginner, you're going to make that. See, the first 12 months, whenever you first start lifting, you're going to make crazy gains no matter what you do, right? And in my opinion, it's better to focus on the heavy basic movements and get those down pat first before you move on to all the other movement patterns. And if you do a push-pull leg split, the likes of deadlifts you're probably going to end up jettisoning deadlifts, and if you don't, you're going to end up fatiguing yourself really, really fucking quick. So you are, because if you think about a push-pull leg split, essentially what it is, you're doing chest and shoulders one day, chest, shoulders, triceps one day, you're doing back and biceps on another day, and then on the third day you're doing legs. Now the only logical place that you would fit something like a deadlift in there is back day, so it is, which means that at most you're going to get, like if you do say legs, chest, back, at most you're getting one day's worth of rest out of it, so you're going to end up getting fatigued really quickly unless you jettison the deadlifts. And like I said, I would, for the first year, maybe even 2 years, I would be sort of keeping the deadlifts in, for the simple reason that the deadlifts is a good way to build strength. It's a really good way to build strength. It's not the best. There's no single muscle group is going to grow massively well from deadlifts. It won't grow as well or better from other movements, but there's very few other movements that will give you the strength that a deadlift will give you. And that strength is something that once you've got it, once you've learned how to do the deadlift and you've built your strength in that movement pattern, will carry across to other, like it'll carry across the strength in your deadlift, will carry across the squats. So it will, hell, it'll even carry across the stuff like leg presses. So it will. And again, things like rows, you know, when you're doing rows, your deadlift strength, that sort of posterior chain strength that you develop through doing deadlifts, will carry across to things like rows as well. So when the time comes and you decide that you do want to move to a push-pull leg split or something like that, and you have to jettison deadlifts, you've already built the strength there, you've already built that core foundation, and then you can use that as a jumping off platform to build whatever other muscle groups you want to focus on after that. So the other reason that I'm not that I'm not a huge fan of it, but I don't think beginners should focus so much on push-pull leg splits, is because typically you're moving to a 6-day workout pattern. You know, you're doing your push-pull legs and then a day off and then push-pull legs again, or like, you know, you'll do one day, have a rest day, then do 2 days, then have another rest day, and so on. So you're, you know, breaking it up that way. But typically, it's a more fatiguing pattern to sort of to fall into, and because of that, when you're a beginner, it's a psychological barrier, I suppose. Whenever you're first starting out, and you go from doing nothing to doing 4 or 5 days a week, that's a big jump. So it is. And if you try and do too much all in one go, if you try and push yourself too far, too fast, what will happen will be you can become discouraged very quickly. You can hit that psychological barrier where all of a sudden the fatigue catches up to you and you think to yourself, what the hell am I doing with my life? And you end up, the consistency falls away. And consistency in any kind of exercise regimen, consistency with both the exercise and your nutrition is absolutely key to any sort of progress. So it is. So again, start off. You know, I would start off with the basics. You know, start off with the basics and don't overdo it too quickly. You're going to make amazing gains, especially at the beginning. So don't jump in both feet at the deep end. Go in gradual. You'll see the gains coming. So you will. And then as you start to plateau, if you haven't gone head first into it, you have more places to go. You have more levers to pull. So you can add in extra days or extra exercises, or go to a different, more intense split, by all means. But you haven't blew your load early, as it were. Anyway, let's get the next set here done. Okay, so we've established that we want to, as a beginner, you want to be focusing on free weights, heavy compound movements, okay, and then building your workout around that. So what would that look like in practice? So the way I would do it if I was doing it for myself, I would start off, say on a Monday, we'll start off with legs. I would start off with something like heavy leg extension to pre-exhaust the legs, then on to squats. And then I would finish off with either Bulgarian split squats or lunges. And I would just do body weight, do those for body weight, and just make sure that I've taken everything out of the legs whenever I finish that particular exercise. Tuesday then, I would do chest, which would be something like a flat barbell bench press and an incline barbell press, and then a set of cable crossovers if you've got access to cable crossovers, flies if you didn't have access to flies or the cable crossovers. I would then take Wednesday as a rest day. Thursday would do back, and I would start off with deadlifts, and then maybe do pull downs or pull ups if you can do pull ups, or pull downs if you can't do pull ups. Then I would do if you're doing, regardless of whether you're doing pull ups or pull downs, I would try to vary my grip. So have one or two sets with a wider grip and one or two sets with a narrower grip, and then some sort of rowing movement, whether that be T-bar rows, cable rows, or dumbbell rows, and that would do back. Then Friday I would do shoulders. So I would, Friday, that's Friday, isn't it? Yeah. So Friday I would do shoulders, and I would start off with something like an overhead barbell press, like military press, or dumbbell press, and then onto some lateral raises, and then finish off with either some bent over flies, or if you got access to a reverse pec deck, you could use face pulls, but I would tend to use something. I would be tempted to use something like a bent over barbell row with with the elbows flared out to hit the upper back and rear delts a bit more, and that would be shoulder day. I would then take 2 days rest and start back on Monday. So essentially you're training 4 days, you're off 3 days. And what I would focus on initially, like I said, get those movement patterns down, especially in the heavy compound movements, get the movement patterns down, but focus especially on being consistent. See, that first 6 to 8 weeks, you should be religious, okay, absolutely religious. Inconsistency is the absolute enemy of progress in the gym. So whenever you're first starting out, learn to be consistent. That's the number one thing you need to be doing. So it is number one is learn to be consistent, and keep at it. And like I said before, as a beginner you will make gains. Don't worry that you're only exercising 4 of those days. Be consistent with it, and I promise you will see gains. Let's hit this next set of flies here. The thing is, you can, as your journey progresses, as you become more and more advanced, you can, if you started off just doing 4 days a week like that and limiting the overall number of different exercises and sets that you're doing, you've got plenty of headroom to grow. So you have, and as you hit different plateaus along the way, you'll be able to, like I said before, you'll be able to, pepper in more exercises, more sets, more reps if you need to, different exercises, and to move your way through those little sort of plateaus. Yeah, so that's the way I would look at it if I was coming at it from a beginner sort of point of view. Think of your think of your exercises very much as the different macronutrients in a meal. Your heavy compound movements or your proteins, isolation movements, they're your carbohydrates, and you're putting your weights away at the end of the workout. That's your fats. And again, be consistent. Be consistent in everything that you do. So important. Anyway, let's do the last set of flies here, and then we'll do the wrap up. Alright, that's it for another video. So just a quick sort of round up and recap. When you're designing a workout plan for yourself as a beginner, there's 3 things to keep in mind. Number 1, and most importantly, is learn to be consistent. Consistency is king, and if you can learn to be consistent with your exercise and your nutrition and all the different aspects, your gains will come. They will come, so they will. Number 2, focus on free weight and the heavy basic compound movements. Okay, your initial workouts should be designed around free weight, heavy basics, heavy compound movements, and that'll give you a good platform for strength going forward. And number 3, don't bite off too much. Don't bite off more than you can chew, because you'll end up over fatigued, and that'll impact your consistency, and that'll kill your gains. And the other aspect of that is, when you do hit a plateau, if you've bitten off more than you can chew and you do hit a plateau, you're having to dive deeper into your reserves in order to be able to push through that plateau, or do a deload. You know, that's where deloads come in, but that's for later on down the line. Start off with 4 days a week, 3 days a week even if you need to, because going from doing nothing to doing anything is a big leap. So it is. So if you pick just 3 days a week or 4 days a week to do, to exercise on, and be consistent with those, you're giving yourself plenty of rest. Mentally and physically, you're giving yourself plenty of rest. You're not going to hit that psychological wall, and that's going to help you to be consistent in the long run, and to stave off fatigue for as long as you can, and to keep hopefully making those gains, especially those beginner gains that you get whenever you've just started out, which are enormous. So they are. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you've liked the video, feed the anabolic algorithm with the likes, shares, comments and subscribes, and I'll catch us in the next one. Take it easy.